Well, it's been 40 months since we talked Trek. I'm so excited to have it back. We ended it with Picard Season 1. So let's get into Strange New Worlds Season 2. Lee Sargent is back. We saw him at the 20th anniversary. It's time to see him again and dive back into Talkin Trek. This is a Trekzone conversation.
Celebrating 20 years of Trekzone, this is a Trekzone conversation.
He is here now in the Zoom room of Trekzone Studio B. Lee, thank you very much for coming back, my friend. Long time no see.
Yeah, 40 weeks sounds, when you say it like that, it sounds terrible. But yeah, Picard season 1, we tell our time through seasons of Trek, and that's a lot of water under the bridge. So excited to be back here to talk about Strange New Worlds Season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So much to get into, and we are going to get into everything as we go along. But we're not going to rush into it. We're going to ease ourselves back into it. We've got a couple of seasons of Picard. We've got a couple of seasons we've got one season of Strange New Worlds, and we've also got 2 or 3 Lower Decks to talk about as well. I think we only ever talked about the first season. Yeah,
there's a couple of those, and I think there's also a Discovery season in there as well.
I forgot about them. You know,
yeah,
they're off.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's just so much going on. Prodigy as well. So it's been interesting. Kind of, we've never had so much Star Trek, but in the which is completely a weird place to be in when you think back to the what probably a lot of people consider the golden age of like TNG, and when it crossed over with Deep Space Nine, everyone's like, oh, this is too much Trek, and now it's like, rolling seasons going into each other, and yeah, it's interesting.
It absolutely is. It's unfortunate that I don't think we're ever going to make that Star Trek every week of the year promise that was kind of around at the start. And looking back at 2020, we didn't have a lot of Trek to talk about all the time. No. We only had those couple of seasons of Discovery. We just learnt about Anson Mount as our new favourite captain, and here he is in Strange New Worlds. Yeah, lots to dive into. And like I said, we're going to start with the second season of Strange New Worlds, because there's nothing like doing things in chronological order.
That's right. Well, I mean, we just obviously finished watching it, so it's everything. I think everything else I'm going to have to go refresh before we chat about it. So this is good, because oddly enough, for ages I wasn't watching the shows week to week. I'd bank them up and then kind of watch 3 or 4 episodes. That's definitely the way I watched Lower Decks. So this has been really interesting, because for Strange New Worlds, I've actually been coming in every week to watch it when it drops. And that's kind of been nice in itself, because I also haven't had like an anxiety around having to watch them immediately. So, it's actually been a pleasure to watch season 2 like that.
It absolutely has. And I think also, too, the great thing with Strange New Worlds, they got away from this need to have a season-long arc, and they were telling episode stories once again.
Yeah, which I think works really well, particularly for me, because I don't necessarily, I like being able to kind of just not so much watch them out of order, but I do want a mini kind of, I don't have to remember anything, et cetera, et cetera. I can just watch. And this is the thing, you go back to original Star Trek and Next Generation, and, the start of Deep Space Nine. And these were like little mini movies, like Twilight Zone episodes and stuff like that. So it was a matter of, you'd step into that world for an hour and then leave. Whereas, with Discovery Season 1, you step into this bigger picture and have to kind of maintain that throughout. And I think the struggle for it is very much with the rabid kind of fan base of, they just did this, I cannot believe it. And it's like, it's ruined everything, and it's going to be this, and it's a blah, blah, blah. And you get to that point where it's like, well, actually, you don't know what they're going to do in the next episode, but you rely on it to kind of ease it out. So, if you're watching Breaking Bad or something like that, you know that it's part of that bigger putting the pieces together, whereas Star Trek, we're so used to it just being those standalone stories. A half black, half white alien shows up and, is fighting with an opposite colored version. That's it. You don't need that in a story arc for a bloody for 5 episodes. Whereas, so you sum that up in 45 minutes and go, this is the concept, this is it deployed. You already know the other pieces. It's just a quick way to tell the story and get a point across. Whereas, this longer kind of intrigue is harder, and that's why Strange New Worlds season 2. I just really, really enjoyed a lot of it. So, yeah.
I did enjoy that Pike's Enterprise wasn't having to save the galaxy once again. That was a nice change on the sister series.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's like the Marvel effect of kind of at what point, once a character snapped their fingers and eliminated half the universe, like what's your next point there? Oh, I'm going to destroy the time and space of multiverse. And it's like, it just gets too big and people don't respond well to too big. Like there's a reason why, if you have a singular story for someone suffering tragedy, it affects people more than the idea of, say, a war, which, has killed a lot of people. We just don't have the empathy to be able to feel on that level. You want to kind of feel on a smaller, more intimate level. And I know, and it's not to say that you don't feel kind of the big kind of picture and stuff, but the reality is as psychologically as you want to focus on a single point. And so these simple little stories, and they're not necessarily simple, but or little, are kind of really interesting in that kind of, oh, good, it's a conflict, it's a resolution, and we get to move on. And I think, having the Enterprise not trying to outdo everything else. And that's almost what the problem is particularly if you're going to do a prequel series, is that the normal mode that storytelling does with a lot of sequels is that you're trying to outdo the last one. So if you're doing a prequel, you're trying to outdo what's come before you, which is what's to come. And in the natural linear kind of processes, if you're watching a timeline, it's like, oh, Kirk saved the universe, saved saved Earth in Star Trek 4. Well, I mean, how many times did Jonathan Archer save Earth? How many times has, Captain Pike saved Earth or saved a planet? It devalues the Vija scenario. It devalues the voyage home. It devalues kind of those big events that you've seen before when you put them in linear. And that's not just Star Trek, that's Star Wars, that's all of them type of thing. When you try and outdo what's come before, I think Darth Vader's reveal of being the father of Luke Skywalker is a beautiful example.
Spoilers. Spoilers.
I know. Sorry, guys. I'll be the one who spoils it. But if you watched the first, if you happen to be a particular age and you managed to watch Star Wars at the cinema and stuff, I mean, I'm not that old.
You're not that old, are you, Lee?
No, I saw Return of the Jedi at the cinema, so I was pretty young then. But at any rate,
2001: Space Odyssey.
No, I did have someone ask me if I was alive when Dune was published, which was painful.
Wow.
I said no.
Walking cane.
Yeah, this is it. But so with Darth Vader, if you watch the prequels, the whole impact of that scene is taken away simply because he's Darth Vader and Anakin, and they've already upped that kind of process. So that's where I find all the challenge with Discovery and stuff like that, where it's this big universe-saving moments, or someone's the most important person in the universe right now, because they have to be for this story, and that's fine, and it's not to detract from that. But the thing is, though, what Next Generation had was, if you ever mentioned Kirk, you did it in reverence, and it's not saying that he was, but it was like us talking about a historical figure. When you put it the other way around, you're constantly trying to reference a future event that hasn't happened yet and hasn't had the impact, and you constantly. So it brings us to the one problem that I probably have with the show, which is the Gorn. I don't have a problem with the Klingons being, looking like movie Klingons. I don't have a problem with any of that. I'm not concerned about canon with any of this kind of stuff, but I do think that Arena is given a disservice by this overemphasis of the Gorn as a xenomorph alien race that does that. Yeah, I mean, it's it's I know people are really enjoying it, and I'm not taking anything away from that. To be honest, I enjoy it from a purely just watching something point of view. So it's a torn thing. But if I was to look at this as a franchise, I think it's lazy writing, which is being lifted from Aliens, and trying to devalue, well, not trying to, but devaluing a exceptionally good episode of original Star Trek when there was no need to. You can always use other aliens. You can always create your own kind of thing. The nostalgia is not even really there because these things don't look like any of the Gorn that we've seen in the past. So, I just that's my only critique of either season of the show, apart from having Khan Noonien Singh's great granddaughter on the show for some reason. I mean, I just kind of, again, it's like you've got Spock and Uhura on the bridge working alongside a Noonien Singh. So when Khan comes aboard the Enterprise and they discover who he actually is, I mean, there's no recognition or knowledge of that. And so again, we're undermining a future episode by trying to be more connected or be bigger in the universe. And I just think you're setting yourself up for some critique, but in saying that, if you don't care about canon, and you don't care about kind of that commitment to that kind of overall franchise or storyline, that, because like I think we all have to admit at this stage that after 55 years of Star Trek, the canon is just all over the place. Like, and it just, there's no way it can't be. And even Star Wars is starting to find that now, where it's like they were very hands-off, kind of changing a huge amount of things and told very, like the Mandalorian season 1 and 2 told its own kind of very small stories. Boba Fett kind of, again, we didn't know what happened to Boba Fett, so that's fine. It's not being affected. But yeah, you kind of pick away at that. And now they're getting to a stage where, like I saw some critiques of Ahsoka, going, oh, they've changed kind of the thing. And it's like, well, they haven't. But yeah, it's going to definitely, at some point, there's going to be a trip up, because there's no way to avoid it. So I think you can always make life easier for yourself by dodging some of those bullets. Don't try and shoehorn a Noonien Singh into a show. There's no need to try and have to explain that one.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it's, I've been watching the series and chatting with Larry Nemeczek as well, Dr. Trek himself, and the mental gymnastics that he's doing to explain some of these connections, the mental gymnastics that Dave Filoni's doing with Star Wars, having to repair the sequels, which, that's a whole other kettle of fish, but it is there. It is an interesting point you make on the Gorn, and I'm torn on that. Larry tells me that, and he's told us here on Trekzone, that it is feasible. The dialogue in Arena isn't necessarily destroyed by having them here now, but I also, and it seems like there's a bit of inspiration drawn from Starfleet Academy as well. The Gorn were in that game, especially the Gorn hegemony. Their emblem is taken from Starfleet Academy, so that's interesting. But yeah, like you said, why does it have to be the Gorn? And also, how do those Gorn from Strange New Worlds become the English language? Not necessarily English language as a universal translator, but how are they the bipedal humanoid with a fully formed language when they are just xenomorphs at this point?
Yeah, and I guess that's like, and don't get me wrong. I mean, as I said, there's a double-edged sword here, because I'm not, I don't. It's horrible to say I don't care, because it's not the truth. I do care. But I'm also enjoying those stories at the same time. So there is, and I disagree with the idea of even the that it's the dialogue, because the dialogue changes for all of these things. I don't think that's an issue. I don't have an issue with the dialogue. What I have an issue with is the fact that that was this idea of introducing the Gorn as as an unknown kind of species. I mean, certainly, I don't think you can. If you want to get technical and tick off points, yeah, maybe they don't go, "Oh my God, we've never seen a giant lizard man before." Sure, but that's certainly the impression you get when you're watching it. And it's so what it does is it removes that impression, or the ability to have that impression. So overall, it doesn't necessarily. It's not about contradicting a line. It's about contradicting the idea that if you were to watch Arena for the first time, or discover that episode for the first time, you're having some of the underlying stuff taken away from you. So if you were to watch Empire Strikes Back for the first time, after watching the prequels, you have been robbed of a certain, a certain feeling or a certain kind of reveal, which, once you know that straight away, and it's valid that spoilers, etc. But you do kind of take that experience away a little bit. And I guess that's where I kind of have the issue. It's not so much a nitpick around, I mean, there's so many lines from original Star Trek that you have to take with a grain of salt because it's a different time and etc. Do I think that, Yeoman Rand almost being raped by a double of Captain Kirk, being kind of pushed under the carpet and told just to chill out, works today? No, I don't. I think you have to interpret it. And you have to say maybe, that was, Spock wasn't being callous at the end of it and saying, hey, that imposter had quite a few interesting features, didn't he? And it's like, like the time that he tried to rape me. Yeah, no, that was a very interesting feature, I guess, Mr. Spock. Thanks for bringing it up again. So you take those kind of, that's not what that intent. Well, it was the intent, but also at the same time that the character is bigger than that, and the franchise is bigger than that one moment to hang on and say, well, it's okay. It'd be okay for Starfleet to ignore HR complaints in the future because they didn't do it in the 60s. And it's like, yeah, but it is different time. And the same argument that goes with the visual reboot has to kind of apply to some of that as well. So I guess, again, coming back to that, that's where my only kind of concern with the Gorn, apart from the fact that the Gorn are fundamentally changed as well, because they are kind of, it would be hard to imagine Gorn building spaceships. They don't look like the type of people that get together and build spaceships. They kind of look like the type of people who lay eggs inside people until they jump out of them. So I mean, if they were hitching rides on spaceships and infecting people, sure, but this is a fully fledged civilization.
The good thing is that the ships look the same, but how are they actually being constructed by this version of Alien?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how did the Gorn that we know currently kind of stand around trying to work out? Because it's not as simple as just putting together a spaceship. It's that linear kind of world that you have to build inside that. So for us, war has actually given us so many tools, and it's contributed so much to the space industry, et cetera, et cetera. Our art and culture have contributed to that type of thing. Like there's so many people inspired by Star Trek who went into work at NASA, things like that. And so you need that kind of comprehensive. And the Klingons were always a very kind of, like, we know what they are. Their Klingons were presented as Klingons to be the foil of the Federation. But when you looked at them in the original series, you're kind of like, oh yeah, these dudes could still build a spaceship. They've got these little bubble belts, things like, so that's awesome. They know fashion. They got sashes and shit. But yeah, so a civilization that's snappy dresser and has cool mustaches, they're going to build spaceships. Whereas when they were presented in kind of Next Generation and stuff like that, just, oh, we're a warlike people, that's all we do, blah blah blah, we're a bit brutish, we're not bright. And it's like, at every time that they kind of introduce a scientist character, it's like, oh yeah, he's, whatever type of thing. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not what, yeah, it's not what it's like. And I do like that Strange New Worlds covered that in an episode where they did say, these Klingons were trying to investigate something or discover something. And they were kind of like, I know that you don't get enough, you don't get enough credit in your empire. That type of thing. I thought that was really interesting. Oh, it was the Orions, was it? Sorry. There you go. Similar kind of species again. They were just they've covered that actually in Lower Decks and all that too.
Yeah.
With being that whole idea of we're not just pirates. And so I think that's something which is probably a misstep with the Gorn in this stage, where we look at the characters we've got here and. Sure, you can explain it, and there's plenty to explain. And you can do the mental kind of gymnastics to explain it. But yeah, sometimes you just want to watch a TV show and enjoy it. And which is what I do with that, which is what I've done with Strange New Worlds, even though I've mixed up my Orions and my Klingons.
Easy mistake to make.
Well, I think I was thinking back to Enterprise actually, who covered that, where they had like yeah, so I kind of, there's always that kind of, when in original Star, and again, it goes back to what original Star Trek was, and everyone kind of really forgets that original Star Trek was basically the Twilight Zone. It used so many Twilight Zone writers and concepts. So an episode like Kirk being split in two by a transporter is purely designed to get you to that storytelling of, imagine if you were to do a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. It's not meant to be, hey, let's just start separating people in the transporter for the rest of the universe. It's like never meant to be revisited. The same as the Mirror Universe was never meant to be revisited. It was meant to just go, oh, imagine, go on a story, go on this story and imagine what a negative version of our universe would look like.
Imagine if you will.
Yeah, imagine if you were, that whole thing. So to build a franchise off that and to build like a coherent canon out of that is a challenge in itself. It's only gotten harder over the years. I mean, Next Generation did a really good job of it because they just kind of did their thing. But then you've got 30 years of that to also deal with, and you've got this and that. It's just so much stuff that you can go, well, it's so hard, but why would you make it harder for yourself? Why wouldn't you kind of, like, Enterprise tried not to do that, even though they very creatively included Borg, but it was a really creative way of doing it, and it was clever. Whereas the Gorn, again, it's this kind of, there should be a terrifying, they're the Borg of this series. There should be a terrifying alien species out there, but I don't think it had to be the Gorn, simply for the fact that you don't need to go to the mental gymnastics of trying to sort that out. I'm really enjoying the characters, to get back on train, I guess. I actually really, really enjoy the characters. I was surprised by that. I think Spock particularly, who I didn't think I would accept as Spock, is presenting some really interesting things, and I see where he's going with a lot of it, so I can kind of wear some of it. Christine Chapel's gotten a little bit more background story than I think the character in original Star Trek warrants, because it's really, and I love Christine Chapel, don't get me wrong, but there's so much nuance that's lost in the original series now because of the fact that, like, when Pike is brought aboard the Enterprise, how is she not rushing there and to see him and stuff? She's on board the Enterprise at that stage. It's things like that which you kind of go, okay, well, yeah, Uhura, why didn't she react when she knew Pike was there? Like, he's been a pivotal part of her life. And again, you're nitpicking to a point where they couldn't have foreseen this, because simply we're doing that sequel, connecting the dots.
It is interesting to note, when I did speak with Jess Bush, our Christine Chapel, that they have a continuity officer on set, and not just continuity officer in the traditional sense, but one that also apparently has memory alpha or something open,
Yeah,
and
right.
they're a little bit freer, Jess said, than they were in the 90s Trek, where they were told to stay to script and you will not ad-lib anything, you will not change a
Yeah,
verb
yeah,
or an
yeah,
adjective or anything like that. Now
yeah.
they've got that little bit more freedom, as I think that, shows have sort of gone that way anyway, but there is still that person on set just making sure that, yes, we can use that take because they haven't said anything. So it is interesting that they have that, and I guess
Yeah. But
that
again,
they're
I
doing
think
that massage.
well, that's the thing. And I think it comes back down to that kind of element of that I was saying before that I don't think it's about ticking off a fact or something. Oh, they weren't there at this stage or they weren't there. I don't think it's as, and so when I was I love the character of Christine Chapel in Strange New Worlds. I like her character a lot more than I like the character in Toz. Simply because we know more about her and she's more interesting. And so that's the trade-off for that, is you can kind of, argue the point. But it's just, yeah, I mean, it's not what, it's just the thing you talk about, I guess, as far as kind of, oh, look, I observed that, and if you're going to, and again, it's that horrible habit of getting into that canon kind of, every scene needs to line up and every connection point needs to line up and stuff like that. And that's not my Star Trek and all that type of garbage. And it's just kind of that, I guess it's really hard to kind of lean back into that and go, yeah, well, if we're going to do that, then, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it matters. At the end of the day, is Strange New Worlds entertaining to watch? And is it a fun ride? And does it make me think? Yeah, actually, yeah. That time travel episode with Kirk and Noonien Singh, great. Like, just really clever and a really interesting kind of performance. So, here's two elements that, I would argue doesn't line up well in the continuity, but it doesn't matter because it was just told well. And I guess that's always the argument of, is it told well? Then don't worry about it. It's fine.
And I love how they, not to hold on to canon, but we will because it's what we do. I did like how they kicked the can down the road a little bit about the eugenics wars and World War III. I thought that was a nice touch because clearly that was always 1996 was so far away in the 60s. Voyager just completely missed it when they did Future's End. And now we sort of have the reason as to why. So and I think those little bits.
Oh no, and that's the thing. I think at the end of the day, I think that's the clever part of kind of. I think it's got to be flexible, and I think I think the continuity person is definitely doing a great job of kind of keeping things in line because there have been points where I think always you naturally go to that nitpick, but at the same time, there's some really clever nods going on. And there's some really clever connection points going on that I kind of really love. So it's always a joy to hear those, and they definitely outweigh any of the kind of that's because they definitely have not done anything apart from I think the Gorn done anything that really contradicts everything. That really kind of slaps everything in the face and goes, nah, this fundamentally changes everything. And even the Gorn, as kind of Larry would have been saying, look, you can do the exercise if you want to. If you want to work it out and make it fit, you can. Like it's not like you can't work that out. Are they a subspecies? Are they like the Remans? Are they, is there a bunch of Gorn who have completely kind of gone, what the is going on with those guys? Just let's let the berserkers out. We would call them bogans. In Australia, we would call them bogans or something else. Some of my best friends are bogans.
Probably from the southern continent.
Yeah. This is the thing. These are the people who are wearing mullets, not ironically. So,
the mullet.
Yeah, I know. Look, I'm not throwing any shade at anyone hair-wise, but you know what I mean. It's like, so maybe they are these kind of tribalistic almost kind of elements to the Gorn. You can do it. You can work it out. But the reality is whether you want to, or you need to, and I don't need to, I guess. So for all my complaints about that, it's just an observance. I actually am more offended that they kind of borrowed too heavily, in my opinion, from Alien, and in saying that as well, also Andromeda.
Yeah.
Actually, probably more so Andromeda than anything. So, yeah, I mean, but again, nothing's new, and the way they're doing it's interesting, and it's interesting seeing Starfleet deal with horror. So yeah, no, Strange New Worlds. It's you didn't like the season 2 as much as I do. I think you were telling me that before.
It's a giant secretly.
Yeah, so was it? Well, no, that you didn't like it as much as me is not really. It's a very
We were
that's a
leading
very
to.
relative. It's a relative term, though. I mean, because I really, really enjoyed it. I actually found real joy in watching modern day Star Trek. Captain Kirk talking to meeting Mr. Spock, meeting Uhura, working with Uhura, forming those bonds. I I was actually quite moved at one scene. I can't remember what the scene was, but I took a photo of this TV at the time, and I sent it to a friend, and I said, "I'm watching what looks like original Star Trek in today's kind of motif, and I would never have thought this, 20 years ago, that I'd be able to see Captain Kirk." And I'm not cringing, and I'm not he's great. The guy they got to play Captain Kirk is really fantastic. And
Wesley.
if they decide to go for 10 years in this show, and bring us up into the first couple of years of original Star Trek, with Captain Kirk at the helm, hell yeah, I'd watch that. I'd watch that completely. Scotty, fantastic introduction to the character.
Amazing.
What a win. And I'm completely on board with that. I think it's just done some really clever stuff, and people are discovering characters that naturally now, in the manner that today's TV audiences expect to be introduced to characters. Original Star Trek shows up, and it's like in the first episode, it's Dr. McCoy and Kirk beaming down to a planet with his ex-girlfriend there. And we're supposed to fill in the blanks, and we're supposed to know kind of what bond these guys share and all that type of stuff, and we don't. Whereas now you who Scotty is, that he's a genius, that he's kind of resourceful, and et cetera, and there is a little hidden tickle in that where he goes, what happens. This is where something like this works exceptionally well, because they've been, there is not very much of Scotty's past. Is there, someone mentioned to me the other day, is there a scene where we see what's his name, his nephew, as a baby,
Oh yes.
when he talks to his sister?
Yes. Escaping me as well.
But timeline's there.
Yep.
So you can introduce Scotty's sister. You can give her backstory. We've never seen her. It's little things like that. Dr. McCoy. I mean, I look forward to when Dr. McCoy gets pulled over, and I assume that he'll serve on the Farragut with Kirk, I guess. But I think that's really interesting as well, because you get to see him maybe get divorced, or anything. These are the kind of neat little tricks that they can do, whilst telling really good stories still. So not being beholden to that. And I think that, as I said, the stories have really, really interested me. So that's been really wonderful. It's a gift. It's a true gift. And anyone who kind of new Trek and stuff like that, which I stay well out of all that. So I don't know if that's still going or not. I assume it is, but I actually don't see it very often anymore, which is great.
Same.
But yeah, so all the new Trek versus old Trek and blah blah blah. I don't hear any of that type of stuff, which is awesome. And if it's still going, that's sad. But if it's not, that's great, because I think Star Trek is getting to that point where it is a really fine balance of what they could be doing with Strange New Worlds. And I'm actually finishing on a cliffhanger. Oh my God, I cannot wait for the next season. And that's been a while since I've been kind of at that point where it's like, oh wow, it's like a best of both worlds scenario for me.
Yeah.
It's like,
How are
holy
they
shit.
getting out of it?
How are they getting out of this? What's in store for the season 3? And because of the writer's strike and all the trouble they're having with streaming right now, when are we going to see season 3 is the big question.
Yeah.
And yeah, a musical episode. I didn't think I would handle a musical episode at all, but I didn't hate it.
The character progression in that. So
yeah,
it is a very worthwhile episode.
Yes.
To progress those characters, because there certainly were some things that were addressed in that episode. Spock and Chapel breaking up.
Yeah.
Spock doing it in a way that was just so in character for what it was. My initial gripe was of how were they getting into this. Was answered perfectly. Was exactly the way that I knew that they were going to do it, because there is no other way to do that kind of crazy and wacky thing in Star Trek, which has been done before. Crazy and wacky done many times throughout Star Trek, and it's always definitely an outside force doing it. We just have to look at the holodeck of Reg Barclay. We can look at the Q and the Grey. We could look at the original series characters dancing like they were to confuse. I forget the episode. I forget what they were doing, but they were dancing and they were being stupid, and it's now a gif.
Mud. Yeah,
it was mud. Yes, I thought it was, because it was confusing the robots. Now, I just want to circle back. You said that I didn't enjoy season 2. I didn't want to let that one escape and let people bash me in the comments. But what I want to mention on that was I loved every single episode. I loved every bit of character development that we got. And I think it's probably a little bit of an unfair thought in my mind as well. Unfair on the creative team. Because they couldn't have known that the strike would be going on, that we wouldn't be diving straight into a third season. I just feel it was a missed opportunity to sort of spend some quality time. I don't know, I just felt that the quality time wasn't there with our cast and crew, even though we got character episodes each and every week, and we had some wonderful character progression. I just felt something was missing through the season.
Yeah, I disagree in my, and when I say I disagree, obviously, and you're not saying you did.
Are we allowed to do that? I know. Are we allowed to pleasantly disagree?
Well, we'll pleasantly disagree, because I'm not taking away any of your feelings on it.
It's amazing. I like this.
I think, I know, but I think
the world should try it.
Well, even say no, but in fairness, the statement of saying you didn't enjoy the season is an accurate kind of thing to pick me up on, because you did enjoy it, but you didn't enjoy it for the way that you would have enjoyed it differently.
It's a really strange thing. I can't put my finger on it.
It's an intangible thing for the season. Well, you're looking at it from an umbrella point of view, which is why we do these kind of catch-ups after a show's finished, so that we can, instead of going, oh, look, what's our reaction to the musical episode? And it's like, oh, wow, blah, blah, blah. But then something resolves in another episode. So in fairness to that statement of saying you didn't enjoy this as much, that's not like, but you still enjoyed it a lot. So that's not, and that's what I was saying, even about my nitpicks. It's like, that's just more interest than anything. It's not, don't read anything into it. Because I loved Strange New World Season 2. I actually think Strange New World Season 2 has rekindled my love of Star Trek as a must-see TV. Like Lower Decks, as I said, I like Lower Decks. I like it a lot, but I won't rush home to see it. I can watch that at any time, type of thing. A week later, 2 weeks later, whatever type of thing. Doesn't worry me. Whereas Strange New Worlds, I was there every Thursday for it. Cool. It's Star Trek Day for me, and that's kind of storyline has really done that for me. So I've really enjoyed that element to it, and I'm really appreciative of, and the writers I think have done an amazing job. So any of those nitpicks and stuff, that's purely all they are. They're just observations of kind of, look, I wouldn't have done it that way myself, or blah, blah, blah. But then in saying that, I'm not the creative team behind a multi-billion-dollar franchise. So in fairness, I don't have anything on my shop. I've got no skin in this game. I don't have to weigh up 50 different audiences and stuff like that, and demographics, and what you can and can't do, and what you want to do, and what you're going to do. Look, I think if I was going to leave this at anything, I want to say that I think this was I really enjoyed this season, and I really enjoy Strange New Worlds, and I think that I would love to get to know the characters more, and I'd love to see kind of where the characters go and how they tie into original Star Trek. And I don't think they've done it a disservice. I just think that there's certain elements that kind of it's up to the individual to move past. So is Arena ruined for me? No, I've seen Arena about 6,000 times. So the 6,001 time is not going to be ruined because the Gorn were like xenomorphs at some point. That's not going to happen for me. But it's just an observation of look from a linear. If you were trying to sit down and watch original Star Trek from Enterprise days right through chronologically as far as it happens in universe, then yeah, sure, there's some of those storylines in original Star Trek are like, whoa, that's like a left turn, or that doesn't mean much because of blah blah blah, and and Christine Chapel's relationship with Spock, it wasn't one-sided. Like it's changed the dynamic of that relationship because they were together, and I think that's also a change point where you go, okay, well that has changed. Am I comfortable with that? Well, I am. But someone else might not be, and that's fine. Don't hang on to it. Just just ignore that part of the storytelling. Heck, so many history books are rewritten all the time. In Australia, if you were to look at history books, there are two very, very different narratives that have been told. And if so just because when we find out more about things, or we change our become more progressive in society and stuff like that, we will look at things a little bit more objectively, or etc. So this is 55 years. You can't not do that. So yeah, no, I love Strange New Worlds. I really love the ship now. I acknowledge the difference in the look and feel of the ship, but I think that they've captured enough of the original in there to pay enough respect to the people who designed the original Enterprise and the sets and stuff like that. And I think they've done a really good job of that. I think that was an iPad being knocked over by a cat. That's good. Yeah. He's talking about it now. So yeah, that's awesome. Apple Care covers that, I think. Hopefully.
Cat being a bitch.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so Strange New Worlds, I think, I'm just trying to think. I love the engineer. Her name escapes me. I think she's a fascinating character as well. And it's such a great role for that actress who often plays kind of similar characters and stuff. But she's doing a really great job. I think overall I'm really, I think the stakes are high enough in the show. I think that the storylines are definitely working for me, and I think the acting is amazing. I think the actors have done a great job. So yeah, full credit to the writers, full credit to the directors. I don't want any of the nitpicks to take away from any of the amazing work that they've done, because it has been at absolute tap dancing on the end of a pin, and they've done a really good job of it.
Yeah, they absolutely have. And what I also loved as well, we haven't mentioned it yet, we're over that 40-minute mark, which is fantastic. Love long-form content, and that's part of the reason that you're back as well. Those old scientists, we have an in-universe explanation of what TOS stands for. Those old scientists, we had Tawny Newsome and we had Jack Quaid. They're real-life versions taken out from Lower Decks, and I tell you what, that is it's a top two.
To be able to pull that off.
I don't know which one.
To be able to pull that off.
They pulled it off, 100%.
They did. So to me, that's like the Trials and Tribulations episode.
Yes.
It's like, how, will this be just a gimmick, or will it be pulled off really well? And they did it really well. Very, very impressed by that. Super impressed, because at the same time too, had I watched that episode without ever watching Lower Decks, I don't think I would have been confused. I think I could have just accepted it and gone, oh, okay, I get this. This is clever. So I'm kind of okay. So that's good storytelling. That's not you rely on needing to know anything about those characters, because they will present themselves in that 45-minute format. And they do. and it was a really and yeah, I really enjoyed that episode. As I said, they've earned enough credit with me to have those episodes.
Yeah.
Would I have done both the musical and the cartoon one in the same season? Maybe not. But they'd earned so much credit for both of them anyway that, yeah, a complete nutter. Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it. Well, Lee, I reckon that's where we're going to put the pin in at season 2. Overall, it's a 95% for me. My little gripe there of my intangible gripe, that doesn't dampen the fact that, same as you, every Thursday was Star Trek Day. Sat down in anticipation of what we were going to see. I was treated to the first 6 episodes as press screeners, so I had a very long time to wait before episodes 7, 8, and 9, and 10. But that anticipation made only the more bigger. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to Lower Decks as well, because I've got the first 8 episodes of season 4 as press screeners. I saw the first one last night. That's worthy of discussion as well. I don't think we've spoken about Lower Decks at all. I think that was
no, we haven't.
So it's going to be interesting to catch up on that and then get your season 4 thoughts. So more to come on Talkin Trek. Lee, really appreciate you coming back. Looking forward to more in the future.
Cool. Thanks very much for having me, Matt.